listen to the reason they say they do.
Agreed. So why didn't he talk about foreign policy in his speech on Saturday?
I'm perfectly willing to talk about foreign policy, as would David Cameron be.
Good.
But you cannot keep on pretending that there is no religious component to the terrorism.
You're about to see a heated debate between Douglas Murray and Mehdi Hasan, a journalist and Muslim thinker. The debate is around multiculturalism in the UK. Douglas Murray did not hold back.
Do you agree with David Cameron that multiculturalism in the UK has failed?
This is the speech that David Cameron made this week, where he talked about the doctrine of state multiculturalism that had encouraged different cultures to live separate lives. We've failed to provide a vision of society to which they feel they want to belong. We've even tolerated segregated communities behaving in ways that run completely counter to our values. Douglas Murray.
Yes, I think he was right. And I think we should start this by just reminding ourselves what multiculturalism is not. Multiculturalism is not multiracialism. It isn't pluralism. For years, the multicultural policy has been able to glide along, in part because of that misunderstanding. Because of the misunderstanding that when you talk about multiculturalism as a policy, what you're talking about is solely immigration, or multiracialism, or so on. It's allowed itself an incredible easy ride, not least by the fact that this confusion has meant that any critic of multiculturalism has been immediately decried for years now as a racist of some kind.
What do you understand by multiculturalism?
Multiculturalism
in the way
as a
that David
policy,
Cameron described.
as a policy, multiculturalism is the following. It is the idea that there is effectively no such thing as British society or British culture. There are simply different communities which you're born into. If, for instance, you're born into a community of an Asian background, you will be treated by government throughout your life as a member of the Asian community. If you're born into some other racial or religious grouping, you'll be regarded in that way. And that anything in that group could be different from what the norm in society goes on. Let me give one quick example I gave in an article yesterday in the Wall Street Journal. It's been quite commonly known in recent years, for instance, that girls of Pakistani origin have, at the age of 16, been taken out of British schools and married to older men. Now, if a white girl of 16 over recent decades had been married against her will to some randy old pervert who wanted to have his way with her, the state would have stepped in. It would have rightly said that that was an outrage. But, lo and behold, 16-year-old girls of Asian origin disappearing from their schools, nobody wanted to mention it because it could be thought to be racist. The idea was that there are different values for different people in society, and there is nothing more divisive than that, and I'm glad that David Cameron has called time on it.
Douglas Murray's critique of multiculturalism in the UK highlights a nuanced perspective on the challenges of fostering social cohesion and integration within diverse societies. Murray argues that there's a crucial distinction between multiculturalism and multiracialism, a distinction often blurred in contemporary discourse. Multiculturalism, as he sees it, has become synonymous with the idea that different communities exist within a nation, each entitled to its own set of norms and values. This, in turn, has led to a situation where criticism of multiculturalism is unfairly labeled as racism, or, specifically in the case of the UK, Islamophobia. Supporting Murray's critique are insights from scholars and commentators who have documented the complexities and challenges of multiculturalism in contemporary societies. Some argue that while multiculturalism initially aimed to celebrate diversity and promote tolerance, it has inadvertently led to the balkanization of communities and the erosion of social cohesion. Moreover, multicultural policies often prioritize group identities over individual rights, perpetuating a hierarchy of cultural relativism that undermines universal principles of justice and equality. Douglas Murray's critique prompts a broader reflection on the concept of national identity and social solidarity. By emphasizing the importance of a shared set of values and norms that transcend cultural differences, Murray calls for a re-evaluation of multicultural policies to ensure they promote integration rather than segregation.
In answer to the question, I think he's wrong. I don't agree with Douglas's definition at all. I believe I'm a product of multiculturalism, not just multiracialism. My father came to this country in 1966. He used to write lots of letters to newspapers with his views on the stories of the day, and he used to get dog litter through his letterbox in response. That 45 years later, in my view, 45 years later, his son can sit here on Question Time with David Dimbleby and a Conservative minister and say that I'm a proud Briton and a proud Asian and a proud Muslim, I think is a testimony to the success of multiculturalism in this country, which is definitely not far from reason.
Mehdi Hasan's example of his father's journey as a journalist in the UK while illustrating progress in terms of individual opportunities fails to address the broader critique Douglas Murray presents regarding the evolution of multiculturalism and its impact on societal cohesion and identity. While it's true that individuals from diverse backgrounds may have achieved success and acceptance in certain spheres, Murray's argument delves deeper into the long-term implications of multicultural policies on national identity and cultural cohesion. Murray's critique emphasizes that while multiculturalism may have initially aimed to celebrate diversity and promote tolerance, its current manifestation has resulted in the dilution of British culture and identity. The emphasis on cultural relativism and the accommodation of diverse practices has led to the erosion of a shared sense of national identity, contributing to societal fragmentation and disunity. There are many examples today of societal tensions and cultural clashes that have emerged in multicultural societies. Instances of cultural relativism trumping universal values, such as the reluctance to confront practices like forced marriages or honor killings in the name of respecting cultural differences, highlight the limitations of multicultural policies in upholding fundamental human rights and equality.
Douglas Murray, do you want to come back on what Mehdi Hasan said?
Well, look, I mean, both of the sort of left-wing people on the panel tonight, Mehdi and Jackie Smith, if you can still call Labour members left-wing, but both of them have done the same thing the left always does on this. You try to have a discussion about the failure of multiculturalism, and you have the BNP thrown in by Mehdi. They're told, well, the BNP member congratulated him. At least concede, Mehdi, all sorts of crazy and horrible and disgusting people can jump on a bandwagon without meaning that it's the wrong thing to have said. Maybe they're just opportunists. I suspect they are. And Jackie then throws in the example of the EDL and thinks, do you really think, Jackie, that was what David Cameron was aiming to do? I mean, a couple of, 100 people marching in Luton does not mean the Prime Minister of Britain should not be making a speech about a very serious matter. And this is a problem. The debate by the left is always attempted to be shut down by associating it with far-right extremist and racist groups instead of having a frank and honest discussion.
What Douglas Murray has just said is very true, and we have just witnessed it recently. The Prime Minister of the UK, Rishi Sunak, when attempting to address Islamism, did not mention the issue as it is. He instead said that Islamists and far-right groups are spreading poison. The need to include so-called far-right groups when addressing Islamic extremism highlights exactly what Douglas Murray is warning us about.
Is the idea, you want to give a speech on multiculturalism, give a speech on multiculturalism. You want to give a speech on counter-terrorism, give a speech on counter-terrorism. Don't pretend they're one and the same thing. Don't offend our intelligence. Terrorism is not a cultural problem. Terrorism is a political problem.
No, and it's a religious problem as well. And it's a religious problem
in your view, Douglas.
No, in the view of a lot of people, including the people who carry out acts of terror, who say they do it in the name of religion.
They also say they do it because of foreign policy, and you always ignore that bit, don't you, Douglas?
No, I don't.
When they say they do it because of Iraq, you don't notice that bit.
At least listen to the reason they say they do it.
Agreed. So why didn't he talk about foreign policy in his speech on Saturday?
I'm perfectly willing to talk about foreign policy, as would David Cameron be. But you cannot keep on pretending that there is no religious component to the terrorism.
I absolutely agree with Douglas Murray on this one. There is a religious component, and all you have to do is listen to the terrorists themselves. Please let me know what you think about this debate in the comments.